Dot, 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 dot. Good morning, everybody. This is Grant from State of the Spark, and I am so glad you're here today. I hope you're doing fantastic this lovely Monday. I know I am. We're having a blast today, and we're getting to talk about some stuff that I was getting in my study time this morning that I'm just so thrilled to share because it's a new mental model for me. It's a new way for me to think about doing an achievement while also making room for bliss. Yes, that was a reference to Pathways to Bliss by Joseph Campbell. And how does Joseph Campbell match with Think and Grow Rich? We're going to touch on that this morning. But before we do that, you know we've got a little bit of interesting other news that's not going to drag you down, news that doesn't have anything to do with the crazy that's going on out there. Hopefully it's news that edifies, educates, and takes you to the next level. So you just got better things to talk about than the same old mess. And before any of that, you know what we're going to do? We're going to share a magic cup of gratitude. I've got an extra cup of gratitude here for Brittany. I've got a cup of gratitude that's going to Jessica Ojeda, and we'll all be sharing a warm cup of gratitude. Also excited to announce before we get into anything. Well, actually, I'm grateful for this. I've got an awesome interview this week that you get to witness live. I'll send out times and an announcement later today for Chad McLeod on leadership, whether it's leading a small business or leading a small city. Chad McLeod has been in both of those. And we're going to talk about leading oneself, leading one's family, and some of his lessons on leadership. Yes, he's helped lead Lakeland as a city commissioner, but he's so much more than that. He's led a PR firm to success as well, and we get to hear from him on that. So excited about that. But what am I grateful for this morning? What are you grateful for this morning? I want to hear about it in the comments. Please do share what you're grateful for this morning. I'll start. I am grateful this morning for breadcrumbs. I'm grateful for the breadcrumbs of the greats, the people who have left their words of wisdom flowing around, whether it's in the form of books, whether it's in the form of quotes that come to me, whatever it is, as long as you have an open, clear, transparent heart, and that is allowing room for the breadcrumbs of the greats to land on your heart and it be good soil, and they are able to communicate something to you. Man, it's just so good. I had some new thoughts, which we'll share below in some of the lessons today. So I'm grateful for the breadcrumbs of the greats and the new synapses, the new thoughts, the new connections that can occur to help you create your world fresh, new, every day. That's what I'm grateful for this morning. What are you grateful for? Let me know in the comments of what is getting you jazzed this morning. What is it, Monday morning? Let's do this thing. Let's talk about other news. So scientists have accidentally discovered strange new creatures of the deep. Here, let's post that there. Boom. You've got that in your comments. Yes, scientists have found strange creatures under a half a mile of ice. It's a bacteria-based life, so it's not necessarily as cool as us finding mammals or Godzilla under the ice. Lisa says, just finished her last delivery of the day. Boom, done already. She just wrapped up and she's checked in for the show. She's grateful for that, man. She's got her deliveries. And Lisa Welsh stopping by. I got to tell you, Lisa, I used your green salts last week. We had a team meetup and we did a charcuterie board with dipping sauces. And of course, I used the Lisa Welsh's Vitality Farms green salt in our olive oil and vinaigrette. It was very good. Thanks for stopping by this morning, Lisa Welsh. So in other news, they did find this bacteria type ice in the Arctic. Now, what was interesting about this is that it was half a mile under thick ice, which means it was growing in the dark. And this particular type of bacteria requires either like what they call whale fall, which is basically when large mammals like whales or large fish decease and basically degrade as they fall to the sea floor. It usually eats that, but there's none of that going on. This is under sea ice, or it usually feeds on sunlight, and there's none of that. This is deep under the sea ice. So in some of their research, they found that this Arctic ice, under the ice, the water actually flows left and right rather rapidly. And in doing so, it is carrying detritus nearly 300 miles to get to this bacteria thriving and living under the sea ice over 300 miles away. They're still unsure exactly how this particular bacteria is thriving, and they were really digging to actually bore holes in sediment and do sediment samples. So it wasn't even a biological trip. But here's the link to that in case you nerd alert like I do. Boom. On us always finding new life on this planet. We've been on this planet so long. We're traveling to the outer reaches. We found the farthest space object called Far, Far Out. And that's something like 132 astronomical units, 132 times the distance of the Earth from the sun. And yet, we're still finding new animal life, new plant life on our planet. It's crazy. It's insane. So that's that first piece of other news. And second piece of other news, last piece of other news, what is the top trait for lasting relationships? The top trait for lasting relationships. What would you guess? I'll give you a second to guess. What are some of the top traits in lasting relationships in honor of Valentine's Day? Of course, I looked into the psychology section of my feeds, searching the internet for what's going on in the world of psychology. And this particular study found out that, is it passion? No. Is it commitment? I'm sure passion is a key ingredient for a passionate relationship, but quite often passionate relationships are fiery ones and don't always necessarily lead to lasting relationships. Is it commitment? No, sometimes people who can be committed can be clingy. I am a committed, clinging fellow, and I know it. I know I need all this time, need all this relationship with Marisha, and I know I'm committed. But is that necessarily the trait to a lasting relationship? No, the trait found in the latest research is humility. Yes, humility is the number one trait attributed to lasting relationships. So humility generally indicates, among other things, the presence of deeply admirable other qualities. So humility usually is the fruit in this research of an assortment of admirable qualities, knowing one's weakness without denying your own skills and strength. So the other aspect of humility is this. Humility isn't just holding back. Humility is being able to humbly communicate what you're good at too. It's the ability to communicate. It's a sense of humility where you're not necessarily the best one, not necessarily the brightest one. You might be, but that's not what it's about. Humility is also about the other person. It's about communicating. So they're finding in this research that the top trait in lasting relationships is humility. They also found in this research that there is a significant link between humility and forgiveness. So if a person in a relationship exhibits humility, it's much easier for the other person to forgive them, primarily because of the presence of humility. It's not about whether they're bold, introverted, extroverted. It's about whether or not we can get over the difficulties of a relationship. Can we give forgiveness? I just heard it said that love and the aspect of passion comes and goes, and we need to normalize when love leads a relationship. And though I agree with that in essence, I often find it's becoming a modern day excuse for when two people lack humility and lack the ability to forgive. So there you have it. It's not just about passion and commitment. Here's the link to that research so you know I'm not making things up. Boom. Research on the key could be leading to lasting relationships. And the thumbnail, of course, looks very cute. So what else can passion and commitment not help you with? Which leads us into our lesson for today. You see, passion and commitment are important. Passion isn't just this raging love, though. Passion's roots, the idea of passion, the word passion, the roots of passion come from the ability to suffer, to endure suffering. What are you passionate for? What are you willing to endure suffering for? What are you able to exhibit massive amounts of commitment for? But I just heard a great quote by Matt Olson. What's the inverse of this? And though these questions are important and good and right, and we need to be asking these questions, there's another aspect of this. And Matt Olson asked a question in these veins. Matt Olson said, yes, you'd be willing to die for your kids, but would you be willing to stay healthy for them? Oh, yes, you are willing to exhibit passionate suffering and commitment for your goals, but are you willing to show bliss for them? Let's touch on how goals are not just about passion and commitment. Goals are about bliss. And if your goals are not leading you to bliss, you need a new cycle. Let's talk about a new definition of the word clarity of purpose, clarity of desires, in order that we can experience bliss while experiencing our goals. So I've discovered a new problem. And as you know, you will be remembered for the size of the problems you're trying to solve. And State of the Spark is all about igniting lives of explosive significance. And we've been hammering this. It's all about igniting lives of explosive significance. But what is that? Is it just grin and bearing through life to make life easier for others? I don't know. Mission does require sacrifice. And the book we've been reading together, The Path or the Road to Character, it's on the other couch. The Road to Character often talks about an aspect in our culture that is not willing to put themselves aside and make a way for others to make life better. And it's reminding us of sacrifice. Remember, sacrifice, the definition of sacrifice as I use it is releasing things of a lower nature to make room for things of a higher nature. But what we're finding is if you read Think and Grow Rich, which I tend to read Think and Grow Rich most every morning. If you read Think and Grow Rich, it often talks, especially in the first chapter, on desire. It relays the story of Edwin C. Barnes, who wanted to go to work for Edison, Thomas Edison. And it says Edwin C. Barnes showed up to carry out one consuming obsession, a burning desire to become, in this case, to become Edison's partner. You know, Marissa and I had a very difficult time in the Dominican Republic. It was gorgeous. It was beautiful. We, in many ways, achieved nearly everything we set out to do, but it was very challenging. And at one point, we were faced with a very difficult question. If we return to the United States, are we giving in, showing weakness? Are we giving up on a very clear desire we had? Or are we following our bliss? It's a difficult question. You see, the problem that I have discovered today is people are very binary. They either don't want anything to do with goals or they're all in on goals, and goals are just white knuckling life until you achieve what you're trying to achieve. And the reason is those who are in the white knuckling group, the strength group, the push through group, those people know that clarity of desire. I want X, and I could write it out. I could SMART goal it. I could write that it's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound, and I could drive. They love this path because it does get results. It works. It works to actually get goals this way. And just like Edwin C. Barnes, he eventually, 5 years later, could you give 5 years sweeping floors on a hope, not a guarantee, that you could work with your dream avatar? Let's say it's Elon Musk. Could I sweep the floors of SpaceX or Tesla for 5 years just to get the opportunity to not work for, but to work with Elon Musk? I don't think I would. I mean, it's available to me. I've looked up jobs of being a barista at SpaceX and Tesla over the years. But do I have the resolve to grin and bear it when I'm not standing a guarantee, but a mere hope of working with his people? That's what Edward C. Barnes did. But I'm a big believer in pushing through. More clarity allows you to endure more difficult times, and you just have to endure until things break. But I will admit that it's tiring. I will admit that there becomes moments where I become unsure of my own internal compass because my all-consuming obsession has caused me to disconnect with my heart. And then I need to ask myself something that I am petrified to ask because it might cause me to change directions yet again. And the question is, am I following my bliss? Am I happy? I'm allowing you to see inside my vulnerable mind for a moment because my mind is generally a steel trap on these things. And I generally would not share what appears to be doubt or lack of resolve. But for your growth, I think you need to hear it's okay to ask the question. This is in the camp of the white knucklers, those who hold on for the goal and the persistence and the push as long as they can. And then when they can't go any longer, they take a nap, which I'm so good at doing, 20-minute naps, and I can wake up and keep going because I've determined a direction. But if everyone you trust and depend on is not going that direction, it's going to be hard. Can you push through? Sure. Can you change relationships? 100%. Can you drive? Of course you can. But the real difficult question, those are all external questions. The real difficult internal question is, am I on my pathway to bliss? Am I happy? You see, clarity, solid clarity, clarity of purpose, clarity of desire is an external thing, and it is great to operate and create breakthroughs in the external. But when hardships arise in the external and you second guess your direction, your happiness, your bliss, in order to know if you should use your clarity, your solid clarity to push through, you have to gut check. But you've been disconnected from your gut because your gut often operates in doubt. So when you white knuckle and push through, you often don't trust your gut or your intuition as much. You're disconnected from yourself. Now, the other side, the other group, the other camp are these feelers, and they only ask the bliss question. And to a white knuckler, this is weak in its own regard. Now, we could reframe and say, no, isn't it strong to stand for your feelings? Yes, we could reframe it all. But these two camps look at the other and question, will you ever achieve X? The feelers look at the doers. And they go, will that ever get you happiness? The doers look at the feelers and say, I see you have happiness, but will you ever actually achieve what you say you want to achieve? Will you ever accomplish anything? Will you ever actually leave an impact? And both of them look at the other and they just don't get them. I can't tell you how many spiritual people who were massively spiritual through their 20s. And I don't mean just Christian. I mean Buddhist, I mean Zen, and they're posting right now, hey, looking for work. Hey, I had to get serious. Me and Marissa had to get serious about income when we came back from the Dominican Republic. Everyone at some point or another, when they're in that field group and they're in touch with their intuition and they're in touch with themselves, at some point reality hits and they have to make an income. So which is right? Both, grass is always greener. Sometimes grass isn't always greener. Sometimes you look across the fence and think, I would never want that. But sometimes reality hits. Sometimes the feelers have to admit they need to unplug from the eternal source and get into some pragmatic realism and grow. I can't tell you how many people in their spirituality phase were living high and had absolutely clarity and transcendence, but they had to come back down to earth and get a job. How many people do we know? Right now, I think in the last 6 months, I've seen the people that I've respected the absolute most for their spiritual trajectories, not just Christianity. They've all gotten practical jobs. And they've beaten themselves up when they made that transition because there's a massive sense of loss coming in from the feeling. But it's the same from the doing. There's a massive fear that if I come away from the doing, I'll lose this financial. But don't both need the other side? If the only tool in your tool set is a solid clarity with the exact same vision, when you get exhausted for your vision, when it is the only course for you to take, you might throw yourself against the resistance in the external, get exhausted, crash a little bit, white knuckle, wake up, and go again. But you have an ever-increasing doubt, am I happy? I think what we need is a new additional, not replacing, but adding to the definition of clarity. If you look at the word clarity, I need to actually share something with you on Pathways to Bliss that spurred this. Joseph Campbell wrote, "So we have a psychological problem. The way to keep from becoming blocked in your spirit, in your soul, the way to keep from being blocked with being connected with who you are is to make yourself," here we go, here's your new definition of clarity, "to make yourself transparent to the transcendent." The way to keep yourself from being blocked spiritually is to make yourself transparent to the transcendent. You know, I read that immediately after I read Napoleon Hill's definition of desire: an obsessive, all-consuming, passion-burning desire clear on one's goals. One seemed to be a very solid form of clarity. The other seemed to be a very transparent form of clarity. Napoleon Hill will lead you in success for your goals. And the definition of a solid clarity, a clarity of desire and purpose that is so clear that if you waver a little bit, you feel it. But Pathways to Bliss will lead you to joy and happiness. And he says, make yourself clear in a form that is transparent, transparently clear. And I thought, what a dichotomy. And then it struck me that is not a dichotomy, but a dynamaton, a dynamic mechanism where you swing back and forth like a spaceship slingshotting from one planet to the next. It is okay to white knuckle your way into a solid clarity of doing. It's also okay to make yourself completely transparent in that form of clarity and open a window. And that dynamaton keeps you going, where you can move from bliss to hard work for that bliss to just before you lose yourself to swing back into understanding bliss. Let me give you two new definitions that I have. And again, if you can imagine this new dynamaton, and I'm using the word dynamaton from the Buckminster Fuller way, and that is, it's a self-propelling mechanism that keeps the human spirit going for good works and bliss, good works and good feeling, good doing and good feeling. And we pull this from Think and Grow Rich and from Pathways to Bliss. So let me just go down this real quick, and then I'll give you a few quick punch lists on what I am going to begin experimenting with in my own life in small ways, on humming between hard doing and good feeling, working hard towards the bliss and allowing myself to feel the bliss I'm working towards. Because remember, your big goals were not only self-sacrificial. Your big goals, the seed of those goals started with a feeling, that a hypothesis that if I went this course in my life, I would feel bliss. And at some point, it has to pay off, or you have to change things. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is insanity unless it pays off. Let's talk about these the two principles. Number one, a doing. And this is the solid clarity. This is a solid, reliable, absolute clarity when I know exactly what I want to do. It comes from Think and Grow Rich. It means consuming obsession and burning desire. It's a detailed knowing of what you want. It's the ability to describe to others what you want. It's an outflow. You know what is going on, and it's choosing a definite target. It's choosing a definite goal. And what you are experiencing is this. When you have this form of solid clarity, taken from Think and Grow Rich, you're experiencing purpose. You are driving a specific, clear direction. It is a solidity, something you can stand on. We might call this stability in Tony Robbins' framework. Now, the opposite of this is the new definition of clarity that I think we need to bring into our vernacular, and that is this. From Pathways to Bliss, and it is transparent to the transcendent. It's a detailed knowing of what you no longer want. It's okay to have a season where you're not really sure what you do want, or what you used to want might be shifting. That mirage in the distance might be taking a different form, but you are getting massively clear on what you no longer want. You have the ability to tell others you value how you feel, or at least how you want to feel. You might not know how yet. The mirage itself might not have solidified, but you can at least tell those you love how you feel and how you want to feel. It's choosing a definite way of life, not a definite goal. If you notice, sometimes we compare habits to end goals, or we struggle for language on means goals versus ends goals. The truth is that when we're focused on a bliss and how we want to feel, we often have vague imagery or a sense of imagery of the sort of life we want to live from morning, noon, and night. And that is like the contra opposite, or the other side of the coin of what we no longer want. I no longer want to punch a clock. Therefore, I have vague imagery that I'd like to be sipping Mai Tais on the beach, or at least instead of putting on my work shoes, I'd rather walk around in flip-flops. There's not a specific goal, but there is imagery on a way of life. What one is experiencing when they're experiencing a transparent clarity, not a solid one. The transparent clarity, what you're experiencing is openness. Instead of like solid clarity, a driving direction, you're experiencing that you're being carried a direction. Instead of definiteness of plans, definiteness of purpose, you are allowing intuition to carry you. One is a solid clarity. The other is a transparent clarity. And they work like an engine humming along through your life. They feed one another. So here's a few quick ways to nurture this that I am going to be working with. I'm going to be working on this. First and foremost, when you have a solid clarity, you have a list of wants. So if you want to nurture this other transparent clarity where you're open to being carried by intuition, carried in a direction, discovering a direction instead of driving one, you probably need to write a list of don't wants. Tim Ferriss popularized this, but this is probably the context for it. Have a list of lifestyle changes. Things you don't want. Because if you feel adrift, if you've been used to white knuckling it and pushing through, and you're just starting to feel adrift and you're losing the oomph, you can help your loved ones by being very articulate and clear about what you don't want. They who are still in the fray, neither one's better or worse, but those who are still in the battle can at least support you. But if you're ambiguous, period, I see the fear is that if I get clear, I'm going to be held too accountable. And that's not the way the transparent clarity season works. That's not how the feeling season works. You don't want to be held accountable to anything. Then be held accountable to what you don't want. You can at least start articulating what you don't want. The other aspect, the other part of the process is allow yourself to start releasing low-producing activities. Releasing negative actions, low producing or negative actions, release them. Release low producing or negative people, release them. You're probably holding them back too. They might be holding you back, but you're probably holding them back from their bliss too. The season has moved on. Just like love is kind of this, could be viewed as a blessing for while it's here, but it might lift itself and move forward, and we have to be open to that. Similarly, people are in your life for a season or a reason or a moment, right? A season or a reason. Release them and let them release you and be completely okay with that. Release your debt. Knock your debt down or cut off the thing that's incurring that debt. Release encumbrances. We have a storage unit that we should have just gotten rid of like a year ago, and it's small, but it's packed with history. And a lot of that stuff means a lot to me emotionally. It means a lot to me. But I need to quit storing it over there and paying that price. I'm literally paying a price for my baggage. Release these things. Go through your life and cut. If you are in such a tender season that you don't want to disrupt that season by telling the world I'm doing X and then having to be held accountable and then having to re-enter a white knuckling season, at least cut off these things. Just free yourself up. This is partly what we were talking about, making space for mission last week. Go back and watch that video, making space for mission. It's the same thing, just with the spirit of transparent clarity, not solid clarity. I have clarity. No, I'm being completely open and clear. Last but not least, consume less, spend less, aka budgeting, eat less, aka fasting, binge less, aka replace show watching with meditation or studying, make room, clear off the soil. I don't know if you know this about farming. We're so disconnected from our agricultural metaphors, but you can only till the soil so many seasons in a row before you have to let not just a season, but a full year of 4 seasons of letting the ground lay fallow. Fallow ground was not just for 1/4 of the year. It's called rotation farming. In a rotation farming scenario, you have a farm and you actually rotate that farm, and one section of that farm lays fallow for an entire year, where you let it repopulate with nutrients and microbiota, and you quit browbeating it for an entire year. This is why Stefan Sagmeister was so big on 7-year mini retirements. He'll never not want to be a graphic designer, but once every 5 to 7 years, he's just going to take a whole year off. It might be time for that for me. Is it time for that for you? Not to say screw it and be committed to being elsewhere for an entire whatever, but taking the time to let your definition of clarity open, release your white knuckle, and let intuition carry you. Listen, I hope that you're learning from my learnings. This is just a reflection from my personal study today. I will be doing these things because I sense that my season of clarity, having absolute clarity is good. But if I were to just be honest, my vision has wavered as life has changed, and COVID has done some of this. But life, not just COVID, it could have been 9/11. It could have been the stock market bubble. It's going to be something else. You know this phrase, I'm sick and tired of living through historical events daily or whatever. I'm not. I love it. But it is exhausting for us to continue to have to hold on to our vision when our vision might need to change strategically. Our vision might need to shift tactically, and that's okay. So on this Monday, I want to encourage you, release your white knuckles. You can always grab it back. You still got to show up and punch a clock. Me and Marissa got to show up and still punch a clock today. But can we do it in a way where we still make room to breathe so that our definition of clarity, when someone says, what's the vision? We are okay. We don't have to white knuckle. We're okay going, I don't know. It's forming. It's reforming. I've been holding on because remember, everything in this life is entropy. Everything in this life has a very open, clear transparency. Every white knuckling moment will eventually decompose. It will eventually disintegrate, and that's okay. You being released and disintegrating into the world is a beautiful thought to go, and that's going to happen. Everything you want in this life does come from aggregating, from pulling together. That is the human spirit. That is what we have made our mark in the world. But every now and again, we have to reconnect with our natural way, and that's exhaling. I think the Zen saying is you can't continuously inhale. At some point, you have to exhale. I encourage you today, let the new dynamaton. I call this, for your reference, I call this the feeling, doing dynamaton. And it's a part of the human spirit. It's a flywheel in the human spirit that requires inhale, exhale. And that's perfectly okay. And you got to find the right pace. You can't do that too quickly, or you get no traction in real life, and you get no rest when you're feeling. But you can't do it too slowly, or everything you've been working for disintegrates, or all the feeling you'll actually just turn into entropy. If you go too long in either one, you'll either turn into this rigid, stuck, arthritic beast, and in the other, you'll just turn into a puddle of goo. You need to find a pace that's good, that works for you. Listen, I'm going to go have breakfast. If you need any help at all, please join us in the Facebook Goals and Gratitude group, and let's carry on the conversation. Ask your questions. Let's become better together, no matter where we're at. If you need tools and training, remember, visit us at stateofthespark.com. Let us know what training you need. Let us know what teachings you need, and we're there to help. But above all things, remember the mission this week: igniting lives of explosive significance, starting with your own. Have a great day.